Hello everyone, it's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. As you know, today's practice falls under the umbrella of the law of least effort. And it's also associated with our second chakra, which is the sacral chakra, or also known as the relationship chakra. And since when we're building and cultivating relationships, most of our disturbances happen as a result of the way that we're communicating. I thought that focusing on communication, the communication strategy today, would be a really great practice to add to the law of least effort. Many of you may know this, maybe you don't, and you can certainly go online to Google it just to see. When we are communicating face-to-face, predominantly there are four components that influence the way a message is received. Now, when I'm actually teaching this inside of companies, I often pose the question and ask them what they think the four components are. And mostly, people will get 3 out of the 4 components. Since this really isn't an interactive presentation, I'm just going to tell you what they are. The first component is body language. And body language contributes to 55% of the message that's received. 55%, that's more than half body language. The second component is intonation or tone of voice, the way that we say things. That contributes to 25% of the message. The next component is facial expressions, and that contributes to 13% of the message. And those are the 3 components that most people guess. The one component that contributes to the message that most people miss are the words. And the words that we choose actually contribute to 7% of the message. So think about that for a minute. That's a very, very small percentage. The words that we choose is a very, very small percentage of the message that we're sending. So what does that tell you? That tells you that most people are communicating or receiving messages from nonverbal communication more than they're actually listening to the words that are shared. And we know this is true. Everybody has had an experience at one point or another where they've walked into a room and they're talking with somebody and they notice their body language is a little bit off. You can feel a little bit of the tension that's taking place and you say, "What's wrong?" And they respond promptly with, "Nothing." Right? There's a miscommunication there. You know, the words, the facial expression, and the body language, and probably even the tone of voice are all incongruent. So when we are communicating, words are going to drop out, and most people are going to buy into or receive the message that's the nonverbal part of it. So that's something to absolutely consider when we're communicating with people. Now, because of where we are in time, as far as we're in the computer and the technology age, many of us are communicating more via written communication, either via text or via email or a letter, right? So now that's a little bit problematic because, as we just shared, we're going to lose 2 components that make up a message when we are communicating with the written word. And that is body language, 55% of the message, and facial expressions, 13% of the message. So 68% of what we're communicating via written communication is lost to the receiver of that communication. And that is very problematic as it relates to cultivating relationships, building new relationships, working on existing relationships, because when we're firing off texts and emails, things can get a little bit dicey. Now, we all know that when we are writing, the way that we express intonation or tone of voice is through punctuation. So basically, if we have a poorly punctuated sentence, we can change the whole tone of the message. So here's a short activity, a great demonstration of how a poorly punctuated sentence can influence the message that the receiver actually takes in. So if I were to write these words and say these words, "A woman without her man is nothing," that sentence is clearly unpunctuated. Now, by simply adding a semicolon, a comma, and an exclamation point, I can change the whole meaning of that sentence without changing one word of it. So I'm going to do that. A woman, semicolon, without her, comma, man is nothing, exclamation point. Now, girls, I know you agree with me, because most of the time when I'm sharing that example live in a class, most of the women are like, oh, until they hear the punctuated sentence. So my point here is that when we are communicating and we're using the medium of written communication, again, whether it's a letter, whether it's an email, whether it's a text, we have to be on high alert that there is a high probability that the receiver of this message could misconstrue what we're saying. I have had this happen to me. I usually am very strong in my language when I'm writing. Hence the reason I chose to create videos for this group as opposed to just writing, because sometimes things, just words, mean things to different people. Different things to different people. So when we're building and cultivating relationships, we want to be mindful of this, because ultimately, if we have sensitive information to share with people, we want to use a face-to-face communication for that, because that will reduce the likelihood and the probability that the message will be misunderstood. If we are using the written communication, we want to kind of reserve that for more or less critical correspondence, setting up appointments, confirming appointments, saying hello perhaps, yet really defaulting to face-to-face communication when we have to share a message that is more on the sensitive side. Because if we choose to do that, and most of us do, fire off an email or a response to an email that has been misunderstood, suddenly now we have these, what I call email missiles, going back and forth, and it's so unproductive. It certainly doesn't contribute to building healthy relationships. What it really does is creates more turbulence, it creates more disturbances between people, and it causes a lot of dysfunction. So that's what I want you thinking about today. As we are thinking about relationships, as we are moving through the day, practicing the law of least effort, where we are owning and accepting what's going on today, as we take responsibility for our actions today, and as we are mindful of not defending our opinion today, I want you to be thinking of the method of communication that you're using when you are interacting with people today. And whenever possible, default to a face-to-face communication, because there's a higher probability that the message that you're trying to convey will be more warmly received than through a written correspondence. So that's what I have for you today. I hope that you have an absolutely outstanding day, and I look forward to checking in with you tomorrow. Bye.